My name is Faaruwq Muhammad. I'm a retired Army Chief Warrant Officer 4. I spent 20 years in the military looking and analyzing, maintaining various complex medical devices and IT systems for the United States government. And that spanned from the time of 1994 until I retired back in 2014. Ever since then, I've spent the majority of my time involved in doing major systems development lifecycle management for IT systems. So getting involved in either establishing software and or moving systems from different environments into the either cloud or other various environments where they can be leveraged. My background around data has always been that way, particularly because I find myself as a systems maintainer, you're always tracking the status of various historical components around systems, so you have to track all the data elements. And you also spend a lot of time creating visualizations around those data elements that help people understand what their status is and where they need to be lifecycle managed and all of those things. So that for me, data analysis and looking at various aspects of system components is very integral to what my career has been. So it's been very easy for me to transition that into the world of analytics for various topics. It could be pretty much anything, and I've taken kind of an affinity to the Bigfoot community from that perspective. So I've always had an affinity for cryptozoology. I am the guy that loves finding out, like in Madagascar, there are multiple new species of animals and creatures that are found. And Bigfoot started back for me when I was very young, watching shows like Harry and the Hendersons or things of that nature. And I actually remember seeing the PG Patterson-Gimlin film a long, long time ago. And at that point, it just sparked my interest in researching things that, people don't think are widely seen, particularly like the giant squid, the colossal squid, and how that was recently found in the last 20 years. And, it's been there for a long time, much longer than that, but people just realize it. So translating that into how I got into Bigfoot, it just something I traveled, all across the United States in the military, just, going from location to location and seeing areas that I felt like were squatchy, so to speak, and for me, it was like places that were very rarely crossed by man. And then doing the research and finding out that, at many parts, for the majority around, less than 30% of North America has been actually walked by man. So what about that 70% or greater than 70 percentile what is in those areas of uninhabitable or untraversable, environments? That's, to me, all the more alluring to find out what's in those areas. So for me, that's why I got into it, because I just knew that I just had a feeling that there was something more out there than what we are knowing. It kind of goes back to that whole concept of the scholars of the earth thought the earth was flat at one point in time, and we are only surpassed by our utilization of technology and our understanding of science to leapfrog each other to be able to find things out that we don't know. And that's, to me, why this is such an intriguing community and field. I was born and raised Muslim, and Islam is the religion. People are considered Muslim. And the bottom line is we are bound by understanding that in one of the most prominent chapters in the Quran states that God is Lord of the worlds, and S with a plural. So we don't know what that means. We don't have all of the answers, but we know it says worlds, not just world. So part of that faith for us is the unseen world, which we believe in angels and other beings. And then it could be other worlds in the universe. We don't know. There's no definitive statement in the Quran that says that there are other planets that have inhabited. It doesn't say that. What it says is God is Lord of the worlds. Then the other pieces in the Quran is it talks about, there's one specific verse that says, and he creates that which you do not know. And for us, that is all we need to hear. We cannot limit ourselves by the things that we are familiar with, the things that science has given us that we've learned about through science, because we believe that God gave us science to explain creation. It's not a competition of God versus science. It is science is he gave us math and science as a way to explain creation to us, because we are logical creatures. We want to understand things in a very clear and linear way. So that's how he gave us science. And we grow in that way. As we understand science, we can create technology. We create technology to learn more about science. And that is why we can create iPhones and why we can create, night vision goggles and all those things, because we learn a little bit more about science and we gain the ability to develop technology to continue to learn. So that cycle will continue. My faith also says that if we were to, our knowledge of the universe and Earth was that if you could take the tip of a needle and dip it into the ocean, and the amount of water on that needle is our knowledge and compared to God's knowledge of the entire ocean, of all the oceans. So we really know nothing, and for us to think that we do know more is probably a little bit self-serving and arrogant in a way. One of the biggest things that the Bigfoot community has to do is come up with a data dictionary. And a data dictionary is going to be able to create a definition for every single term. So just something as simple as like encounter. What is an encounter? Defining the encounter, the scope of an encounter. So if somebody is having, like I would propose that there are different experiences and an encounter. So if you have an experience, it could include encounter. So an experience is like, I heard something. But an encounter could be, I physically encountered Bigfoot and or some type of cryptid. So you could say that you had an experience where you were out in the woods and you heard some wood knocks, you didn't know what it was totally quiet, but you never saw anything. So you can't say that you necessarily had an encounter, but it's all in the definition. So when you start thinking about an encounter with Bigfoot, there are a lot of different things that go along with that. So what was the Bigfoot doing? What was the color? What were the facial expressions? What was your reaction? What was the individual witness's reaction? Was there animal involved? All of those different experiential elements create a data element that can be tracked discreetly. So essentially, if you think of it, other than having like a big field of like text information, where you could actually take and make a drop-down list of, there were 500 encounters, and of those 500 encounters, people saw a green, a blue, a black, a purple, a white, whatever color Sasquatch or Bigfoot they saw could be selected. And that individual discrete description that is very defined and specific will help you be able to create a visualization that let's just say 500 encounters, 60% of those people saw a brown Bigfoot. That helps you really be able to tell a story that's way more definitive than a whole bunch of variable amount of text inside a text box or a box. And that's what you want to get to, is having individual discrete elements. What color were the eyes? Could you see his eyes? Yes or no? Did you have a dog with you? Yes or no? And then those questions ask more questions like, okay, how did your dog react? Did your dog get very paranoid? And you could just keep diving. So you can essentially come up with hundreds of data elements that are discrete around one encounter. And that could be, from where you were to all the way to what it was doing, how you reacted, what did you do when you responded. It just has so many ways to go. So one of the things in studying in statistics is they always say that, correlation does not equal causation. However, when you amass an incredible amount of data elements around a specific event, you have to align and be able to acknowledge that there is some level of causation. So if you look at if you look at 50 encounters from multiple parts of the country, and you are able to discreetly categorize each one of those data elements, let's just say what the Bigfoot looked like, what it was doing, where that person was. I was in the woods, I was hunting, I was a hunter, I was in the woods, it was very quiet, it was very early in the morning, specific time. All those specifics that give you that entire picture around all of the entire event and the encounter, you can say that in the Northeast, in the South, in Florida, in Texas, in Alabama, in West Virginia, in Maine, that these common data points exactly happen. And the lifeblood of the Bigfoot community of validating what is experienced out there are qualifiable, quantifiable, credible witnesses. So when you have people that haven't talked to each other all across the country, and they can put together a data-based picture that you can barely refute because of the discrete data elements that are being captured from that encounter, they can't all be making it up. And you can't make up stuff where a lot of people don't even the fact like who did they tell? That the data elements like who did you tell? How long did you go before you actually shared that encounter? Many people go many, many years. Why? If they saw something and they felt like it had to be shared and they were hoaxing, why would they wait 15 to 20 years or not even tell their spouse? But now you're able to pull that information out of them and you see that direct correlation between something that happened in Maine all the way to something that happened in Southeast Texas. And that, to me, is why the data is going to tell the truth every single time. And that's why I crave that environment. I crave being able to have, my fingertips at that much data, because you can literally decode and demystify the entire Bigfoot community and the Bigfoot phenomenon with the right type of data capture and the right type of data manipulation. When you pull data from multiple encounters, the person that is doing that data extraction and that data manipulation has an obligation to maintain the integrity of the data set by including all the data elements. What I've come to know through, engaging with various researchers is that there are very widely known bodies that have decided that only the blood and the flesh and blood aspects of the encounters should be captured. And to me, in the data world, that is skewing data. And that creates an entire loss of credibility of that entire data set and the way that the information is being displayed or presented. So when you are capturing data, you have a responsibility to keep every single data element, whether it makes scientific sense or not. So people talk about the paranormal aspect. I personally have read, listened to, or watched thousands of encounters, and I'm not a person that is quick to believe anything. And my brain is kind of weird. I have an ability to kind of retain a lot of information about stuff that I'm really interested in. So I've essentially mentally cataloged all of these encounters, and I will tell you that the common theme between them is undeniable. And what I want to do is be able to have a way to share that with people. But you got to go back and do the actual discrete detailed research and work to actually come up with the artifacts and the databases necessary to be able to show that information in a visualization presentation. And that's one of the things that I wanted to do. I'm excited about that aspect of it because ultimately when you talk about paranormal, you cannot discount the number of UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, or UFOs, unidentified flying objects, the way that they're talking about. And the disclosure of the federal government, from the perspective of how, the Navy recently was acknowledged. But this has been going on since the Blue Book Project, and the Air Force started. So at the end of the day, you could go back to what happened overseas in Great Britain, and they had their own program and all of those associated programs around UAPs. This is not new. But the relationship between them and Bigfoot is undeniable. There are some episodes of one of my favorite is podcast called Sasquatch Chronicles, and there are some episodes in there you can't deny the type of information that people that have no reason, it brings them no value other than ridicule and being ostracized, that to come up with that information. So for me, those are the ones that provide that credible witness and those data elements that can be extracted and put together to be able to say, yeah, this is a fact. This actually happened. And regardless of what people may say about that person's credibility, or that you cannot take, it's not about the one encounter. It's about the thousands of encounters over and over that have the same common, exact same type of characteristics that tell the story. And it's the masses, it's not the H's, it's the masses. You cannot deny it. And that's why, you have to acknowledge the paranormal aspect. I took a Lean Six Sigma black belt course, and part of that is a very heavy statistics foundation. And when you're trying to present information to a group of people for them to change the way they're doing something, you show data elements and you show how the data is presented to show, oh, look, this is a root cause. So you'll find a root cause because you'll be able to look at how the trend of the data is being the data is being trended, and you'll be able to back out into that and find very specific reasons why something happened. Well, if you decide to extract only a portion or select only pieces of the data to be able to manipulate, you skew it, and what ends up happening is you end up with a result that either you want or that does not tell the complete story around what actually happened, or the root cause, or the source of that information or that data. So essentially, you've essentially just totally destroyed your credibility by any party that is actually going to look at it objectively. So now people think that you're biased, and once you're considered biased, you lose that authority to be a thought leader or an expert in that domain. When you think about Bigfoot, a lot of people always ask, like, what is it? I do not, and I will not, participate in any time spent trying to figure out what they are. In order for you to know what they are, you have to have one in possession, and it has to be openly disclosed to be able to understand. What we do know is what they do. We understand what their behavior is like. We understand how we react to them. We understand what our animals are. We understand their habitat. We understand where they eat. We understand what their demeanor can be. All of the things that we've had thousands and thousands and thousands of encounters to tell us, we know that. What we don't know is what they are. And that, to me, is a waste of time. Because until you actually have, captured enough of them or whatever to be able to distinguish that, it's kind of pointless. So I am not one of those people that will spend time trying to figure out what they are. I only focus on what the data has told me, which is very specific information about about their characteristics. So, I think ultimately when you talk about how are you able to create a true map of everything about what we know, there are countless books out there where people have dedicated themselves to providing factual evidence-based information about encounters. There are websites that, even the ones that have been tainted from my perspective, there are podcasts, there are blogs, there are different, on various platforms, social media platforms, there are various groups that have taken interest in capturing information from people who are witnesses. In order to create a comprehensive picture, which I think would very much decloak the entire and demystify the entire Bigfoot phenomenon, you need to be able to set up a database with data scientists that are dedicated to pining over the thousands and thousands of artifacts, documents, sites, and even utilizing things like AI, artificial intelligence, machine language, to be able to ingest information into various databases. So, hey, look, this software program can listen to an encounter from listen to numerous encounters and extract specific data elements and put them into tables so that they can be discreetly analyzed, and then grouping that together and then creating visualizations that could tell a story. Like in the Northwest, in the springtime, you're gonna see a brown, a black, and a white Sasquatch, normally with a pod of 2 to 3 kids. These will get older over time. They will be following the growth of the berries from that particularly grow, the blackberries that grow in this region. If the berries are not in bloom at this time of season, you'll know this. That you can extract that type of definitive information so that people can pinpoint where they're gonna be. That has a darker side of it, because once you do that, you truly decloak them now everyone knows where they're going to be, and it changes things. So, entities or organizations that want to maintain a close hold on this type of information would be inclined to kind of shut down that type of visibility, because like I said, you really pull the veil off of everything that people know or thought that people know. Because once again, it's not about the one encounter. It's about the thousands of encounters that are brought together to create that visual picture of exactly where you're going to see, what's going to happen, what type of environment you're going to be in to be able to realize these encounters. So what that would take for me is to have a team. So I'm going back to school. I have a Master's of Science and Technology Commercialization from the University of Texas in Austin, and I'm very proud of that. But I'm going back to school for a Master's of Science in Data Analytics. And what I would like to be able to do this fall, and what I would like to be able to do is to start my thesis project, which would be to actually do exactly that. Go for 2 years, build that database, utilizing, even if it's just a subset, let's just say all of the encounters in Texas, Louisiana, and Arizona or New Mexico, in this region, or Oklahoma, to be able to pull and extract and go through all the books that have been written, all of the blogs that have, all the groups that exist, and pull those together to create that visualization. I think that would be a compelling story for what Bigfoot looks like in this part of the country. I personally think an endeavor like that would take at least 2 to 3 years, and you'd have to. I don't think it's it would be awesome if it was a full-time effort, because ultimately you need to build that database, and you need to have that team of, like I said, data scientists, some data engineers, database analysts, and then a project manager, or at least a project manager and a couple of analysts to be able to track the progress of it and report up to various stakeholders, whoever wanted to know what was going on with the project. I've done this before in a different capacity, but those, they're intense, and you don't spend a lot of time in engaging with a lot of people that are outside of that, because you want to be able to pine over that data, and it's very time consuming, and I'm passionate about that stuff, but I'm not. I know a lot of people would probably find it monotonous, but as you start utilizing the data and you start seeing the data tell the story, the whole story unfolds right before your eyes, and it just becomes evident that this is real. It has been real for a very long time, dating back to when people started having encounters from the First Nation, the First Nation, whether it's the Native Americans, whether it's, anyone that has been in an environment where they have seen or experienced these, all the way up to what's happening in present day. This is not something that we understand, because I don't believe personally that they are from this planet, but ultimately this is definitely a phenomena that is real. So I grew up a Star Trek guy, and I watched Star Wars, but I was always fascinated by the technology on Star Trek, because the tricorder that they used to scan the body and tell what's going on with it, that started from somewhere. That started with a stethoscope. And the stethoscope means that we continually challenged the existence of learning, and we continue to learn and grow. If we continue to push ourselves, who knows what we could discover beyond this planet? If we acknowledge that, when they've done the statistical analysis, that they said that there's billions of Earths in the universe. Who knows what else is out there for us to learn? I would, being a part of an intergalactic group of people that are traveling to learn about, not only what exists out there, but what could help and benefit us, make us smarter, make us, to preserve and respect our environment more. For me, that is the allure, is that there's so much we don't know. Think of it, like I said, that tip of the drop of water on the tip of a needle, and how we could learn more about that ocean around us, even though we'd probably forever still be on a drop on the needle. That's what's exciting to me, is that we can learn so much about what we don't know and still have eons of infinity of time to continue to learn. I've heard this a lot, and I think that ultimately this goes back to the data. It's not a question of are there entities that are wanting to control the narrative around what exists and whether they exist or not? This is not a question. These are parts of encounters. People are being told that they've seen a bear. People are told that they didn't see what they saw. It's a fact of the encounter data. What that is, once again, I don't dive into who it is because I don't know that from the data that's experienced. I know that it is happening. People are being told to be silent. Why? Once again, I don't dive into that. I focus on what the data is telling me is that there are entities, there are groups of people that can, when there is a significant of an encounter, that they are there to minimize or control the narrative around what happens. And that's, once again, thousands of encounters that have told this story. It is not a speculatory type concept with me. It is a fact. Who they are, what they're trying to do, I don't know. I don't spend time on that because I don't have enough data to tell you that. But what I can tell you is it's happening. The last thing I'll say is this. Yes, the phenomena has been something that people have disputed for a long time. What I would offer is that if the Bigfoot community wants to genuinely be taken seriously, every single group, every single publisher, every single author needs to attack this from a data perspective. Because if we can amass this information into very distinguishable, discrete data elements that can be manipulated, there's no need to walk around and try and argue with people. The data doesn't lie. And that's what I'll say. The data doesn't lie.